to another Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, Captain Logun, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today, so tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good week and a good weekend. I know I did. This week, we got ourselves a developer update that may be harkening back to a simpler time. All that and more in this week's episode of Keelhauled Podcast. But before I get into any of that, I have to thank the patrons. They're the ones that went over to patreon.com/Keelhauled podcast to support this content. And I appreciate the support that they give. Just a reminder, this upcoming weekend, the 23rd of November, we are doing our Keelhauled community member podcast. So we should hopefully have a patch that comes out by the time you're listening to this. There will hopefully be stuff in there to experiment with. And this is your reminder, set aside some time on the 23rd. If you have any questions on when that's going to take place, you can always head over to the Patreon just the Discord. The Discord has the actual event that's going up. That event, I realize, needs to actually get edited because it did not take into account the actual daylight savings time change where we fell back an hour. But in there is the Gold Hoarder recording that happens at 1 p.m. PDT every last Saturday before the last Saturday before the last Monday of the month. In which case it's going to be the 23rd, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Is that 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Savings Time? And that is going to be 9 p.m. over in the UK and Europe. And whatever time Regis still has to get up, I think it's like 5 a.m. his time, which is wild. So right now we have 6 people listed. Looks like Kylea, Rustbelt, Evil Morpheus, Static Mirror, Regis, and myself. If you guys want to join in on that, you're always more than welcome to. It's always going to be done in the recording in the Gold Hoarders channel on the podcast Discord. So if you are a patron and you want to join up for that, just feel free to jump into the Patreon or into the Discord to find out how to get into there. If you have any questions, concerns, I can always try and help troubleshoot that. But effectively, we're going to be recording this upcoming weekend with the community members to talk about the latest state of the game, any news that comes out as well too. So just a heads up there. What I do like to do is every episode, I like to call out the patrons. They're the ones that are supporting this content. They're helping make it continue. So I like to give them a shout out every episode just to make sure that they know that I appreciate their support. So thank you to A Chick, Toasts, L Cute, Balls, Blue Turtle V1, Captain Chonky, Captain Long Shorts, sorry, not shorts, Chateau Noof, Super Pack, Zombie Killer, Cloud, Cosmic Johnson, Static Mirror, Davram TV, El Jefe Esteban, Godhammer 6, Jorby Jorbs, Carl Embo, Kylea the Aficionado, Lumpy SRQ, Evil Morpheus, Space Admiral Oars, Xbox Mike 29, Mutinous Max, Norwegian, Regis Stella, the Brony Pirate, Ribloid, Rustbelt Kid, Skamelt 666, Captain Dasm, Tommy D, TN Professor, Vibralux, Wezzy Cruz, Big Bad Pat, Mina Fairy, The Lore Chronologist, Deadeye Dre, Hager Owl, Jeff H, Captain Duckweed, Evil Martha, Peter Miller, Ruski Doo, Thor Von Blitz, Luke Lore the Insipid Ghost, and Wow. Thank you all so much for your support. I love you all. It means the world that you're doing this. Again, don't have to. Always appreciate it, but it's never required, especially with holidays coming up. Make sure you're assessing your finances. If you need to take off a month, totally get it. Always happy to make sure that, and don't you guys, the folks that come and they have to, like, they tell me that they're sorry that they have to drop support. Don't worry about it. I totally understand. Finances change all the time. So with that, pirates, thank you. I love you. Make sure that you take into account the Gold Hoarder episode this coming weekend. I would love to have some folks jump in and chat with me because it's been a while for a few of you. Alrighty, pirates. This is going to be a very brief episode, I think, this time around. Unfortunately, there really isn't a whole lot that I can speak on because, believe it or not, the patch that was due to come out this last week was unfortunately delayed. So 24 hours notice went out on Wednesday, and we were planning on having our update on the 14th. Now it looks like this is going to be coming in on Monday. They said, apologies for short notice, pirates, but unfortunately tomorrow's planned release has been postponed. We'll share more details in the coming days, including when players can expect the monthly update for launch. Thank you for your patience. They went on to say that today's update was delayed in order to prioritize game integrity following a high impact issue being discovered. Our team has identified a fix for this, and we are now targeting early next week for launch of the November update. Thank you for your understanding, pirates. Then just a couple days ago, they said, ahoy, attention pirates, the Sea of Thieves servers will now be offline from approximately 10 a.m. UTC on Monday, November 18th, so that we can deploy the delayed November update. Please plan your voyages accordingly, and thank you for your patience. So this is something that we have seen from time to time. It's not too often that we have these updates delayed, but it is generally a good thing as opposed to a bad thing. I would much rather have to wait 4 days for a patch that could potentially break the game in more of a severe state than some of the issues that we've had to deal with in the past, compared to just having even more stuff messed up. Especially if that stuff is something that might even pertain to rank, reputation, or logging commendations. I would much rather they address it now. But there is a laundry list of things that I would love to see. And I've kind of started to take a little more proactive account on this. Like most of you know that I generally report players that are being either toxic or have like handles or guilds that are outside the code of conduct in the terms of service, or ones that I think are generally just cheating. But for the most part, I'm going to start going in, and anytime there is a bug that happens, whether it be what I recently had to do, which was go in and report the bug that I found with the introductory voyages. So if you're not familiar, and I'm pretty sure I don't remember ever seeing this in the actual like high seas, but in safer seas, which we'll talk about later this episode. If you go into the different trade companies, they have an introductory voyage. That introductory voyage works well for 2 of the 3 factions. The Merchant Alliance is currently broken. I don't know if this is something that other people have come across, but I was able to repeat this on about 5 different attempts. And basically what happens is the information on what you need to catch and where you need to go to get the crates to be able to catch those said creatures does not populate on the voyage. You can cancel it. You can throw down another one. You can quit the game and come back, hop in safer seas again. Doesn't matter what I've done. I've been unable to get that voyage to populate where I need to go. Heck, I even sailed around. Not gonna lie. I sailed around for a little bit trying to find which island it might be. I had no luck. It was unfortunate. There was a lot of time wasted and grubs eaten. I don't need to get into that. I hoped that I could get that achievement knocked out since I realized how quick and easy they were. And because of the bug, that who knows how long that bug's been in the game, I certainly haven't had anyone tell me about it, and I haven't seen anyone talk about it. And it just seems like one of those things that, for all I know, that could have been in there since the beginning of the quest table changed, or the captain's table changed to become like where you introduce the voyages. I can't believe that that's the case, because I'm sure people have gotten that achievement since the launch, but for the amount of time that I've been around, it's not something that's come across my ears when I've been listening around for news. So I went ahead and reported it, and I got some very nice feedback from the bug reporting team, just letting me know that they took my report and passed along to the devs, and they think they may have identified the issue and are working on a fix for it. So hopefully that achievement, if that's something that you're missing or knew was around but wasn't quite sure how to achieve it, you do have to do it in safer seas, as far as I know. And it is under each of the different trade companies. There, if you like go down to the very bottom of the voyages, there's one that distinctly says like it is an introductory voyage. And you just have to do it. It's pretty quick. You go kill one skeleton captain, you go dig up one chest or two chests. And I have to say, I was actually pretty impressed with the way that they did these. You get a nice little kind of companion in the form of the pirate lord, who kind of appears on your ship and actually kind of guides you along the way to kind of finish the voyage, and lets you know like, hey, by the way, you might want to be careful, because in high seas there's a good chance there's going to be people around and you may not get to keep this treasure. So keep it close, turn it in frequent, and be very careful on the horizon. Safer place now, but not always. And they did a really good job with that. I was really happy about that. So all of that to kind of like end on a sour note, where unfortunately couldn't complete the Merchant Alliance one due to the bug, prevented me from popping the achievement, which was kind of like it's not a big deal. I'll just wait for a patch update to come and try it afterwards and see if it's still going, and if it is, report that. And that way, if the dev team did actually get that fix in there and it's still not working, they know. But I've wanted to try and start being a little more active in the bug reporting process. It's hard for me to sit back and relax and just chill and say like, hey, the game's broke, fix, without helping provide some of the details that I think that they need to know about, to be able to just kind of have that knowledge in the back of their mind, like, oh, so yeah, that's okay. We didn't know about that. That's pretty important to know. So stuff like that. So what I've done is I've gone in and actually updated the Insider client on one of my Xboxes, and I plan to jump in from time to time and do my due diligence of sailing around, working on stuff, and just taking a look and seeing if that is, stuff is working. I'm only going to be giving about an hour a week, and that's because for the most part, I've got a lot of other things that I want to, stick with. For example, like Call of Duty right now has grabbed me and will not let go. And I've had a really good time playing that and waiting for this November update. Once the November update hits, I will probably hop back over to Sea of Thieves and test out some more of the stuff that's in there, as well as like check and see like, how things are doing, but for the time being, I feel like I want to try and do a little more to contribute to the bug reporting. And if that's something that you are so inclined to do, or feel like you have time to do, be interested to hear, like if there's ones that you ever got word back on that, hey, this got passed up and patched, and then we'll kind of take a look and see what are some of the repeat offenders. Because I know like for like myself, skeleton hit registration with the throwing knives has kind of been a thorn in my side, going around hunting stuff or doing things, and coming across a skeleton, throwing it, and then like, meh, you just get that, like you throw the knife, it hits them, you get the hit marker, they don't die, and you're just like, wow, I'll chalk that up to sharpening my knives next time. Okay, that's fair. Okay, I can explain that away, I guess. But it never feels fun, right? It never feels good to run into a bug where it hinders or deflates the experience, because for all intents and purposes, there's a lot that is in Sea of Thieves that is consistently working against you. There are a lot of things in this game that want to make you sink. So especially when you're like trying to take on another crew and you get rared, the worst thing in the world is when the base level of the game is breaking and you're no longer able to trust in tools working the way that they need to. That's always the roughest. hands down, I will take getting slammed by a skeleton ship with a kraken and the shrouded ghost sailing or like swimming away from me from another crew over doing all of that and knowing that the reason why I didn't was because something like a crashed client. Like if I can't get to the shrouded ghost in the Sea of Thieves on my own when I sail it, then that's on me, right? But if the game crashes and the client crashes and I reload and it's just gone, or it can't load me back in properly, that's harder to swallow. That's harder to deal with because, at least in my mind, I've got agency. I have a way to address this in some fashion or another, and I can do my darndest to be able to get what I need to get done. But when the game fights you too, beyond just the things that are in the game, that's always going to be really tough. It's always going to be really, really hard. And I feel for the devs on that. You know, I empathize with their desires to make the game fun and engaging and entertaining, and to run into situations where that is not the case. And it's because the code is not stable enough, or there's an issue, or someone's found a way to break something. It ruins it for more people. And it's always easier to remember times where you were upset most of the time. Like most people can usually remember when things upset them and they're vocal about it. More people, it's kind of like when you look at reviews, things are either overwhelmingly positive or, like extremely negative. Like there's never anyone that's just kind of whelmed by something that feels like they need to go and speak their piece about it. So people are either really praisey or they're really negative. And that's just kind of how a lot of our memories and stuff work. So I'm hoping that with this next update on the 18th, we'll be able to go and jump into the game. It'll be a super smooth launch, and all of the fixes that they've intended are in and are working as intended. Whereas otherwise you would run into a problem where that's just not the case. And that I think it's really tough because you want to see them succeed so that you can succeed in the game. And I hope that goes really, really well. It's hours now as of the time of the recording that we're going to be able to find out one way or the other how that patch is going to end up being. So far, fingers crossed. No announcements at the 11th hour saying that we need to reschedule. So for all intents and purposes, sounds like things are good to go. Everything's green on the board, ready to launch. And because of that, I think now is a good time to talk about the developer update. All right, developer update is out. Drew Stevens is going to effectively be the next executive producer, I would imagine, as he is the production director for the moment. And if updates start getting better, I would not be surprised if he got a promotion for that. But a lot of that is going to come down to how things are actually going. But for the time being, production director Drew Stevens, nice guy, is going to be kind of helming all of the developer updates. We're back to developer updates. This was something that came as a result of the game's launch and feedback from the community saying, I'm not really sure if there's something else to do other than just the normal voyages and forts. So maybe there could be some stuff. So, and one of the things that they first did, funny enough, were build rat adventures that were supposed to be monthly updates. And those monthly updates were going to include different things. And the first thing that they brought in was skeleton thrones, where you had to go and sit into the throne, either solo or with another crew, to get different doubloons. And the doubloons that you earned were something that you could then spend on the cosmetic rewards that were offered at the time. And a lot of that stuff was kind of time limited. Really different time. But it harkens back to an idea that the dev team want to ensure that the developer updates are separate from the Sea of Thieves news videos. And part of me thinks that a lot of that is just to give them a little more breathing room to be able to talk about stuff in more in detail. It's been a long time since we've had one of the podcasts, which typically were some of the ways that they would go into some of the deeper stuff. Nowadays, I don't actually get to hear much from the team outside of the Sea of Thieves news stuff. I've kind of given up on interviews at the moment because doesn't seem like they're really able to really be giving interviews too often anymore, unfortunately. But at the time being, I will settle for the developer updates. I liked them when they were in the first year or two. I think it was like January that Joe kind of like stepped back and said, hey, don't really have a need for these, so we're going to cut back on these videos because there wasn't so much to really talk about. Now it seems like there's something to talk about, so they're bringing them back. And I welcome that because it doesn't feel like they are trying to bookend the bad news with them telling us, hey, these are all the new things that are going to be coming. Keep an eye out. Hey, we're going to be updating the Emporium in the update as well, too. So check these things out. Instead, it's more like, here's the pitch for the cosmetics that are going to be added to the game, whether it be through gold and doubloons or through ancient skeleton or ancient coins. And here are some of the news things that we're going to be talking about with tools, features, events, drops, things like that, that will be coming to the game over the next coming month. And now we'll actually have a moment to be hearing from the actual production director to explain to us kind of the state of the game and where the studio's at with these changes as they continue to tweak and work on some of those things. There's a lot that goes into this that I think are tied to the YouTube algorithm because videos over a certain length tend to get pulled out of the algorithm because they aren't something that people will have time to watch. Typically, the shorter, the better. Attention spans are very low. That being said, I really appreciate that they're willing to separate these out because it feels less of a pitch with some bad news and then another pitch and feels more of like, let's sit down and address the community directly with all of the things that's been bugging them. So what are some of the things that are actually going to be talked about in this dev update? Well, the first thing is that this video came out prior to the delay for the patch. And as such, we are still waiting to get traps, disguises, as well as hanging from the ledges and crouching to the game. I believe crouching is still out of the game, which is wild to me. And the reason for it is because they wanted to ensure that this update was going to have more time. It was something that they spoke about directly. They said that they wanted to make sure that this update had more time to test internally as well as with insiders. The irony being that in the 11th hour, they ended up delaying it because of a critical error that they found. Now, I'm still very much glad that they did that, but given that this update was something that would have that should have had time in the studio, because I imagine that this is something, granted, the what was it, I think it was the 17th or 18th of October when season 14 kicked off. They quickly shut down a lot of the features, or didn't add them to the game at all, turned them all off, and then had a couple weeks to work on patches and fixes, as they kind of explained, like, hey, these are the things that we know what's going on, so just kind of a heads up there. They then had a couple weeks to test and verify that the stuff that they were working on was good to go and actually fixed the issues. Most of these sprints, couple weeks, typically in the game development world that I know of, and that seems to be something that's kind of unanimous across the board with their agile design of updating. And hopefully, he said in the video that this was one that they had locked in for a while, and that for whatever reason, they felt very confident. He said he was feeling like this was a 9 out of 10, going to be good, working everything. It looks like that may have to get bumped down to an 8 out of 10 because of the critical error, but hopefully the delay was enough to make sure that it is a 9 or a 10 out of 10 as far as Drew would label that for the update that's actually coming. So those are the different things as far as like traps, disguises, hanging from ledges, and I believe crouching that are coming back with this update, along with a slew of other like cosmetic updates and stuff like that. I've actually addressed, I think it was the last episode, where we kind of broke down the Sea of Thieves news video. And I'm glad that we'll get a chance to really kind of play around with this, because I think a lot of people have been very curious to see how these work. I know myself, I'm very curious to figure out how traps work, as well as things like the mimic dart and stuff, but I don't believe that's coming right away. Some of the things that they did talk about were some of the fixes that they were testing and working on to ensure would be fixed with this update. So quick swapping guns should be fixed. That was something that was introduced as a result of crouching. Now, I've heard many people say this, and it seems like something that the community is aware of. If the dev team isn't, that quick swapping never left, and that it was still in the game. It was just much more difficult to achieve, but it was still very much possible. I can't speak to that. But what I will say is that there is always going to be someone that finds a way to do it. And if it takes a macro to get it to happen, they will happily hit that macro every time they need to, because for them, it's the matter of winning and losing, in a make-believe pirate game where you run around and kill skeletons and gather pigs and shoot cannons at sharks. They got to win. Sorry, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to degrade their choices in Sea of Thieves. It's just funny to me, the min-maxing that people are willing to go to for the sake of an hourglass fight, when most people are so sick of hourglass that they'd rather just not have to do that to be able to get their curses and stuff. There are the dedicated ones out there that just absolutely love that mode. And I'm glad that it's in the game for you. I hope that they do stuff to expand upon that and grow it and make it more interesting, because for all intents and purposes, outside of the first major update that they made to it shortly after launch, where they fixed a lot of the spawn locations and added more spawn locations, they realistically have not touched hourglass. And I don't know why. I don't know if there's something in the code that would break too much if they did try to do that, but they've really only added like a little bit of cosmetics when the Burning Blade came out. And I can't really think if there's anything else. I'm struggling to think of like there being any significant update. It most certainly hasn't gotten any nerfs, and they definitely won't touch the levels required to be able to get the curse, which is surprising, because they've reduced the numbers for so many other things over the game that the inconsistency across the board feels a little biased in its action. Like commendations will get knocked down from like hugely untested numbers to the point where you're like, are you really trying to make people try and like spend their entire life in Sea of Thieves to try and get this one commendation done? Because it seems impossible to never touching hourglass or offering alternatives for players who do not want to play in that mode. So it's very interesting to me that in this time they're willing to go and update just about anything, as long as it isn't hourglass, which is again bonkers to me. They're willing to make things much more accessible for everything else except for hourglass. For some reason, I'm on the soapbox, so I'll leave it at that. Some of the other fixes, actually, before I get off this topic, that they are working on is players should no longer be able to acquire supplies or access barrels after moving out of range, which that's really nice, especially if you're in PvP, and not being able to get underneath the Fort of the Damned to get treasure, because a lot of people really didn't take advantage of the Burning Blade being such an easy nab for the Chest of Fortune. So instead, they're trying to break the game so that they can get the Chest of Fortune out of the Fort of the Damned without having to actually do the Fort of the Damned, or inconvenience the well-natured souls of the people who are currently working on the Fort of the Damned. That being said, very weird that even was possible, but I'm glad that those are getting fixed, and we'll hopefully hear from the dev teams or the community if there is something that means it's not actually possible, or I guess not possible, but fixed. Next on today's docket for the developer update, let's talk about the studio looking to have broader improvements across the actual studio, with details later to come. Fantastic news. This is exactly what I wanted to hear from the studio. This is exactly what I expect them to do. The number of issues that they have had with the game over the last couple of years have just been really pointing a finger at quality. I don't know why or for what reason, but quality has slipped. It's something that I've talked about enough times. So when I hear that the team, especially Drew, speaks to the fact that they are doing broader improvements across the studio, I'm glad for that, because for me, it was interesting to see them launch Pirates Life into the game, doing it remotely, and knowing that the quality of the game was higher when they were working remotely, because for whatever reason, maybe this is just a mentality of like, if I have to re-download this client update again and move it to another team, and I have to wait an hour for it to download, I'm going to go insane. And I don't know if that's because working remotely, you're a little more cautious about when you hit that send button, because you're just like, if I upload this, it's going to break the game. And we've definitely had moments where the game has been broken because of someone sending a bad update to the game, and they've had to roll back to a previous update to be able to go in and do that. But I really hope that they do genuinely go through each of the different teams and address them. Say, what are the challenges that are causing you to have to feel like you are rushing content, that you are not able to take the time to properly double check your work? Are the updates too frequent? Are the bugs not getting addressed? Are teams not communicating well enough with you? Do you feel like you are pressured to get to the high priority ones and not necessarily get to the low priority ones fast enough? Are you busy working on Everwild? Where are the bottlenecks in the flow of development that are causing them to run into these stability issues, these quality issues? I don't know how Microsoft's Xbox's best new IP, one of the best things that came out of the Xbox One generation, I do not understand how Xbox can look at this game and say, this is one of the now flagship IPs for the company. It has grown to multiple different platforms. It is as big as it's probably going to be able to get on the Xbox and Steam. There's still a lot of growth to be had in PlayStation, and a large opportunity to hop over to Switch. But even back when they did the launch of the PlayStation 5 version of Sea of Thieves, there were issues and things wrong with the game code that was like, guys, fam, this is your one-time launch for this platform. If you screw this up, you will lose people's faith in how good this game is, because they're not going to believe it. They're going to look at this and be like, oh, it's a junk Xbox game. Why did we bother? So you had to make it good, and it still had some issues. So I look at the statement of broadening or broader improvements across the studio with details to come as a signal flare, saying like, hey, we need attention, we need help. And I hope each of the dev teams that are working on the game that need that are getting it. And I hope that there are practices being put into place, as painful as they may be, to ensure that quality comes. There used to be a saying, it's long since gone, but there used to be a saying that was associated with Blizzard. It'll be ready when it's ready. And when it's ready, it'll be Blizzard ready. And when Blizzard puts out, and I will give them this, Blizzard used to operate on their own timeline back before they got bought out by Activision. They used to operate on their own timeline. They were still putting out games from time to time, but their games had a polish. And if something wasn't working right or something wasn't good enough, then they wouldn't launch it. And if people asked when was it coming, they'd say soon. And it got to the point where they said soon so many times that people started to say soon as if it was a word that Blizzard had trademarked. Like soon TM for trademark used to be how people referred to updates from the dev teams over at Blizzard. Like if something was coming soon, it was quote unquote Blizzard soon. And that could be anywhere from a month to 3 years if it needed it, because they took the time. They took the quality to heart, and they tried really hard to ensure that anything that they produced was at a caliber that exceeded what their previous expectations were. And it worked. Their games were exceptional. They came out with some of the best games. They refined genres that had been slowly budding for a while. And it really wasn't until much later on in the lifespan of Blizzard, when they started to get so big that they grew too much, WoW became a thing, and they had to spike growth to a point where they couldn't maintain that quality as easily as before. And other teams started to suffer. Then the purchase of Activision Blizzard happened, and Bobby Kotick got his fingers into the studio and started to play around with whatever seemed to be the most valuable, and pushed and pushed and pushed. The dev teams had lots of issues going on internally outside of just the actual development aspect of it, but there was still something that harkened back to the golden era of Blizzard, and that was, it'll be ready when it's ready. And I think that's something that Rare could inhabit. I think that the Sea of Thieves community looks back at the first year of content, where they had 3 major content updates and a smaller refinement patch alongside build rat adventures. I don't know how they did that. I genuinely don't. Because in my mind, my cat is going nuts with a toy on the bag. She's playing her own little world right now. And she's, of course, if there's plastic, cats, they're going to make noise or eat it, or lay on it, or do something that is going to cause havoc. So that's what she's doing right now. But to get back to what I was saying, Rare somehow in that first year managed to release Hungering Deep, Shrouded Spoils, and The Devil's Roar. The Forsaken Shores. Yeah, Forsaken Shores. Alongside Build Rat Adventures, where we got, kegs that had fuses that you could, in skeleton kegs, who knew how to run. God, I miss those days. Being afraid of skeleton kegs will never be something I forget. And I can't wait for Sea of Thieves Classic to come out in like 3 years, where we actually go back to the days of when skeleton kegs could run. And I have reached skeletons were a thing outside of the crow's nest on a skeleton galley. So we're looking at a time when Blizzard, or not Blizzard, but Rare managed to do a lot in a short amount of time. And I don't know what happened to those devs. I don't know what happened to that mentality. Maybe it was a crunch mentality. I'm sure it probably was. But it was something that gave you results that you were proud of. Shrouded Spoils, still one of the best updates to the game that I ever recall. And it was when they introduced roaming skeleton ships and megalodons with different colors and rarities and personalities, and the fog that came in. And it was just a real testament to what they were able to do with the game with a short amount of time frame and just the developers that they had. Now you look at the studio's grown significantly. They've added on multiple support studios to be able to help out with this, and quality has waned in a way that feels like the focus is no longer on Sea of Thieves, which I know isn't the case. Whatever's going on with Everwild is its own beast, and they have devs there, and I don't think many of those devs are cross-pollinating between the two IPs. Could be wrong about that. But at the end of the day, I hope that what happens is that Rare gets to that stage where they look back and they think, why were things so much cleaner before we added all this stuff to the game and just made it easier to ensure that updates were fixed? Have we added so much to the game that the game is now impossible to balance as far as the code and the quality and the actual updates? And if that's the case, I think I said this. Gosh, I think I said this back on the 200th episode when I believe it was the last time I got to interview Mike Chapman for the podcast. And I think one of the questions that I had was, when is Sea of Thieves done adding stuff? And as far as I can recall, some folks might want to go back and listen to that episode to see if that's actually what was going on, because I've had a few conversations with him in the past. Not all sure how many of those are on the record, but I recall the answer being that they had lots of plans for the game in the future, and that they're not sure that they're ever going to be done putting in features in updates, and that it just will continue. And given the nature of this game and its code, it feels like the sacrifice of performance has now gotten a little too high, and they need to figure out ways to bring that back to an adequate level that the game feels rock solid in its code before we start looking at how many weird things can we throw at the game to enrich the sandbox and to surprise and delight before it breaks again. So I'm kind of hoping that that's where things are going, and that's why they're going to be doing these broader improvements to the studio. But for the time being, we really don't have a whole lot of trust to offer the studio until we start to see updates that are coming in that are doing what they say that they need to do, and that we feel confident that Rare is addressing things in a timely manner, and that these updates stick, and that yes, quick swapping may get fixed with this update, but will it be back and broken again with the December update? That's the concern. It's not necessarily if they can get the update fixed the first time, but whether or not that update will stick after the next update, because that's what feels like happens each time. All right. The next thing that I wanted to get addressed in this episode is the security issues that they've been working on. They said that they've been working on ways to detect and fix the wielding giant items. So when you do whatever it is in the game that you do, that causes you to have like the ginormous, like the monstrous sized items. They are working to see if they can make sure that that is something that you get auto banned for if you're attempting it. So I'm not sure why that is something that warrants an auto ban, to be perfectly honest. It seems pretty innocuous, but there's obviously something going on with that is causing Rare to look at it and see like, hey, this is something we don't want people messing around with, because it's obviously breaking something. The other thing that they're working on, and this is something that extends beyond just the actual studio to the actual platform itself, is the ban evasion. One of the biggest issues I think with Sea of Thieves is that it's so easy to get a copy of Sea of Thieves or Game Pass and jump onto a fresh account. All it takes is an email address, and when bans are getting thrown out for accounts and not IPs, that makes things a little bit easier for them to jump back in. So I don't know why they can't figure out, like, at some point, if you're going to get banned, you're obviously doing something that is against the terms of service, which means you're probably doing something against the terms of service for Microsoft, which means that for all intents and purposes, your IP should be banned after repeat offenders. So I don't know if that's because they're looking to try and find out like what the IP is for the different bans and see if there's a correlation and a connection between who's getting banned and from what area. But it seems pretty good to me that they're still working on this. It's good to hear about that. They're also looking at bad language for repeat offenders. They have a monitoring team that is going to be looking at people who are using language that they deem bad, and just trying to make sure that bans go out on that for people who are continuously doing it without needing to have it be something that gets reported, which I appreciate, because for all intents and purposes, that is something that is easy enough to look at. But there's obviously ways that people are going to be able to get around that just by spelling things differently. I in the adventures of getting into Call of Duty like heavily for the first time probably ever, I would say that there are really bored people out there who have just tried to do whatever they can to try and get anything that could be considered offensive into their clan name or into their username. And for the life of me, I don't know why the culture is the way it is for that game in particular, but it is really bad. So they've made it so easy for you to report people that it is literally right-clicking, report player, and you just go down the checkbox of the most common things that they report people on. You click submit, and you can either just submit it or you can submit and block that person. And wow. They make it so much easier than having to go through an entire form to fill out for Sea of Thieves situation. But that aside, they have stated that cheating reports have dropped by 50% since August, which is good. But I also have noticed, at least according to the Steam charts, that the player base has also dropped off. So is the player base population and the number of reports dropping off correlated? Potentially. I mean, if people get sick of cheaters in the game, they're probably going to do one of two things. They're either going to stop reporting or they're going to stop playing. So I'd be curious to find out if the population for the game has remained relatively the same, and the updates that they've done have noticed like a significant drop since each update that they've put in, or if it's just an overall 50% drop, not taking into account the player base stagnation. So really kind of not sure what's going on with that, but just my thoughts. Could be nothing, could be everything. So it really depends like on what they say. They could say 50%, drop in cheating reports. That just means reports. That doesn't mean cheaters. That just means people reporting it, right? So I like to be optimistic and think that the people that have been reporting cheaters have stopped as a result of the efforts that they put in to try and prevent people from being able to cheat. I think the last thing that we really need to talk about outside of some positive news is one that is probably less controversial than it was a year ago, where Rare about this time announced Safer Seas. And everyone kind of had some pretty strong opinions on Safer Seas. A lot of people still very adamant that if this game ever has a way to turn off PvP altogether, that would probably be the death knell for the game. Looking at Fallout 76, I don't believe that to be the case. I think it will just change the player base, and more people who never play Sea of Thieves but want to will, and vice versa. Who want the PvP will just find another game. But it'll be interesting to see how things progress, because at the moment, if you're playing in Safer Seas, that is a PvE mode. And the goal of the mode is to give you a basis and an understanding of the world of Sea of Thieves as it is, aside from some pretty high level concept content in the sense of like emissaries, world events, PvP, hourglass, stuff like that. That is all pretty high level stuff that you need to understand as you're getting into the game. And if you don't have the basics down as far as how to sail, where to sail, how to do a voyage, how to get gold, how to do, general things, going into high seas can be overwhelming or annoying to a certain degree. So I think of Sea of Thieves as a really good training world. You can throw your kids in there if you really just want to give them an opportunity to have fun in the pirate world without getting, attacked by other players. Chances are they're going to lose their ship anyway. So there's less likelihood that needs to be because of 30 and 40-year-olds sitting there like nothing to do, just sailing around looking for people to sink. that they will sink themselves. Trust me, it's totally fine. No one will be hurt by them being in the game, on safer seas at least. With the other aspect of that, safer seas provides a perfect opportunity to try and get some really interesting and unique types of Sea of Thieves shots or cinema. A lot of people like to try and make content using Sea of Thieves as a world, as a background, to be able to try and create content as a result of that. And from my perspective, I find it to be relaxing. Whenever there's a time when I go into Sea of Thieves and I don't necessarily want to do a whole lot, but I don't necessarily want to deal with anyone either. I just need something that sounds, looks, and feels nice, and I can go out and do something stupid for a little bit to scratch that itch of sailing around, right? Safer Seas is a great way to have like a little piece of heaven outside of the normal high seas where everything is chaos. And for the most part, it's been pretty successful. It's been low key. Not too many people mess around with it because a lot of the stuff that you would want to do in Sea of Thieves, the things that really tied to commendations, rewards, things like that, all have to be done in high seas. So not really too big of a deal. So they've decided that they want to focus on it being a lot more of a training ground. And what was originally a 30% disc, or I guess it would be a 70% reduction in gold, is now going to be changed to the full 100% earned gold. So items that you turn in safer seas will now grant 100% of the gold that you would get if you were in high seas now, or safer seas. It would now be in high seas as well. With the caveat that you're not going to be able to get emissaries on that. And because of that, you're going to be missing out on an extra, 60%? I'm trying to remember how much I can't remember how much the actual guild emissary or the actual emissaries reward. It's 110% on top of what you normally get. I can't think right now. So I'm sure you're probably yelling at your mic, at your speaker right now. So apologies. But yeah, you're missing out on emissaries, which is a lot of gold. 125%. I think I'm going to stick with 125. Final answer, 125%, Alex. I don't care for high sea or safer seas getting 100% gold, in the sense that it does not impact me because that's not where I'm going to be playing. The people that are playing there are going to be getting gold, and they're going to be able to buy whatever they want in the game, as long as they have the reputation to be able to get it. Pirate Legend is not accessible in safer seas if you haven't already gotten to that level. So you have to go get Pirate Legend in high seas just to be able to get access to purchase that content. No Pirate Legend can be made in safer seas. The reputation, which was originally capped at 40 for level 40, is now going to have a reduction. So instead of it being a max of 40, it will only be a max of 25, which I believe is the gate for being able to buy the emissary flag and get a captain ship. So effectively, you sit in the little safer seas, you get up to 25, and then you can go to high seas, buy a ship, get an emissary flag, and play the full breadth of the game. Right. What you're effectively doing with this change is you're saying, okay, players need to be able to buy a ship, pay for an emissary. At the moment, they're getting up to 40, which is well past the level cap for that, as far as I understand, but they're not able to afford that, which means they're having to sail around doing really bad voyages without the boon and opportunity to earn as much as any other pirate would with emissaries. So if they're playing through safer seas, then they can get their characters' reputations up to 25, get a real good understanding of how the game works. You can't access Reapers, you can't access Pirate Legend, you can access Order of Souls, Gold Hoarder, Merchant Alliance, and Hunter's Call. So being able to earn the full amount of gold in safer seas will help build a baseline of pirates who have enough money to be able to afford buying their own captain ship when they do want to transition into high seas without feeling so restricted. They'll also be able to buy the emissary flags that they want, and they'll also be able to get supplies if they need to, or just blow it all on cosmetics. I guess they could do that as well too. But the main thing here, for me at least, is that gold has never been the I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but the marker for how good of a pirate you are. I've always felt that the mark of a good pirate is the one who has worked the hardest towards the hardest achievements that they can get, or the one that has really excelled in certain areas. Like if you have level 5 distinction in Order of Souls, then I look at that as you've invested the time, you've invested the energy to get that. That is a distinction, as it's so rightly called, to separate yourself from the people, the plebs, for lack of a better term. And as a result, none of that is tied to gold outside of what it costs to actually purchase those rings. And the voyages are free. You can access whatever voyages you have access to, so you don't have to buy those anymore. The only thing you spend gold on is cosmetics and supplies, effectively. So that's it. Like you can repair your ship, you can buy trinkets, you can buy supplies, you can buy cosmetics in the shops. Gold is not really there to show how wealthy you are. No one can tell how much gold you have. They can see what cosmetics you have, but outside of your own personal cosmetics, there's no way to really show what you've purchased, because anyone could have purchased a ship set and put it on the livery set, left, and then you would have that. So now the rare cosmetics are the ones that are the most coveted. The obsidian capstan, the obsidian wheel, the shrouded ghost figurehead and trinket, the titles, things like that are the real indicators of someone who's either gotten extremely lucky or has managed to do something that not too many other people can do. Gold curses, things like that. So looking at Safer Seas with that mindset, I honestly don't care if people in Safer Seas make 100% of the gold that I would make if I was flying a ship without an emissary in high seas. And honestly, if I'm flying a ship in high seas with no emissary, I probably don't want to be bothered, and I probably don't care about the gold. It's probably just me trying to go out to do something tied to accommodation, and I probably don't need to worry about my emissary ledger. I probably don't care about the gold because the cosmetics that I have are the cosmetics that I've been using forever, and chances are most of the cool stuff that I want is either in the Plunder Pass or I've already purchased those items like when they came out. So as long as I have a couple million in my pocket, I usually don't worry too much about what I want to buy, because there's very little left for me to buy. And the stuff that does cost a lot that I haven't purchased, I probably don't care too much, because it's probably an aesthetic that is just something that I'm just not driven to get until they make something that is, in which case I will work towards that. But if I'm sailing around without an emissary flag, it's probably because I don't want to be bothered. And there's less incentive for people to fight someone who doesn't have an emissary flag as opposed to someone who does. So for me, rare going in and taking a look at what Safer Seas has done, what it's meant to do, and how they can fix that or adjust things to tweak it to make it a little more enticing for people to stay in there for a short amount of time, get satisfied, and then hop out, works for me. If you're one of the people that are out there doing voyages and just going out there for 100% of the gold, and you don't care that you never progress past level 25, or you have all of your distinctions and you don't level anymore and reputation doesn't factor into your mindset, then for all intents and purposes, have at it. What does it matter to me what you do with your gold? Your gold is your gold. You earned it. You got it back to turn in wherever you manage to turn it in. And to be perfectly honest, trying to turn stuff in to the vendors without a captain ship in Safer Seas is painfully slow. There's no Reapers. So it's not like you can just go to Reapers and turn it all in there either. you have to go and move every piece of treasure. And it is still faster to run that stuff than it is to try and trust the grapple gun. So I have no problem with them changing this. Safer Seas is already, the cat's out of the bag. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. Safer Seas is here. Whether Safer Seas changes in the future is going to be dependent on how well players interact with it and whatever happens during high seas. If high seas gets to be so toxic that Rare can't curtail the issues involved, Safer Seas may become a haven and Rare may look to split off the player base. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. They're pretty stuck in their ways as far as like the PvEVP setting. So I don't really see that as something that would be an outcome, but I'm also not the developer. And as long as I have access to the game and get to play a majority of the way that I typically play, it doesn't bother me what's going on with other people's play styles. You know, I'm not going to tell people you're not playing Sea of Thieves right because you're going and spending all your time role playing on a beach with a couple of skeletons. Like, what does that matter to me? Like, I'm sorry, you're not going out and getting treasure so I can steal it from you. Whatever. I can hop servers. I can go dive. I can go do hourglass. There's so many other ways to earn gold in this game that, to me, bickering over whether or not Safer Seas, a mode I don't play, gets more gold or less gold, really doesn't impact my day-to-day, because one, I have no clue how much gold people have, and it doesn't change anything outside of you being able to buy supplies, but it's not hard to get supplies either. So outside of that and the economy balance, which is already destroyed, then I really don't see a reason to worry about it. Maybe if the economy was still balanced and people didn't have, double and triple digits worth of millions of gold, then maybe we could, have like an honest discussion about how impactful Safer Seas' gold change is going to be. But at this point, I don't see a reason to really debate that. Not when the economy in Sea of Thieves is already just ridiculous and broken. So maybe if there's ever a gold wipe, we can have this discussion again. I do think that the level cap getting lowered from 40 to 25 is a fantastic incentive to get people into high seas. I really do. I think lingering in Sea of Thieves mode for Safer Seas as a training mode beyond 25 might just be out of pure preference at that point, and you're still comfortable without having to worry about getting Pirate Legend if you haven't already. So people will stay where they want to stay if that's what they want. Level won't change that. Gold won't change that because they would have already gone. So at this point, I would say, whatever your feelings are on this, don't let them impact your way of playing, because I don't see how this could impact people's way of playing in high seas. All right, pirates, that is pretty much it for news. There is only one thing else that I really have to announce for news-wise, and that is SOT Fest 2025 is going to be happening in July. That is going to be on the weekend of the 11th through the 12th, which really makes me wonder when my birthday is actually going to be, because it's on the 6th, which is a Sunday. So my birthday is actually on the weekend. Nice. I will take that. As I recall, it definitely was not on a weekend this year. No, it was. I lied. It was on. Oh, that's right. Because I went out. I forgot about that. So yeah. The Sea of Thieves Fest 2025 happening July 11th through the 12th. It is going to be at Bescott Stadium again in Walsall. Or Walsall. I don't think I ever found out how you actually pronounce that, but tickets are going to be going on sale 7 p.m. GMT, which is going to be, what is that? If it's 8 hours ahead of me, that would be 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, or Pacific Daylight Savings Time, and 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Yeah, I think that tracks. But 7 p.m. GMT, check your clocks, check your Googles, check your Siris, check your Alexas. Hey, Alexa, order some more cat litter. So make sure that you guys are doing so. and you work to get your tickets, you probably already know them. I did want to see, I did check to see if we were going to be getting any Festa Legends news. Nothing at the moment. So no word on ticket announcements yet, but I imagine if Doug has the opportunity and things are working well, then we will hopefully get an idea of if Festa Legends is going to be having tickets go on at some point soon, because I think last year we got them in December. Hopefully the studio is helping him with that, because it's basically him. So I know they typically have been very supportive for SOT Fest, so hopefully they're doing the same for Festa Legends, so that Doug can have some help with getting that up, because last year was fantastic. Had a really great time. Really looking forward to next year, where I get a chance to go and see a whole bunch of people and stuff as well. So just remember, tickets are going to go on sale on Black Friday at 7 p.m. GMT. Black Friday, if you don't know, is going to be the 29th of November, because that is the day after Thanksgiving, which is the 28th. So not too long now. And yeah, I think that is pretty much it.
Those aren't pieces of 8. They're just pieces of junk.
Aye, the original plan was to use 9 pieces of 8 to bind Calypso, but when the first court met, the brethren were to a 1. Skint broke.
That is going to do it for this episode of Keelhauled Podcast Pirates. Thank you so much for listening. I did want to shout out one person in particular outside of the normal patron stuff that I do. This person reached out, and for all intents and purposes, I usually don't. I try to call out the reviews, but I don't necessarily call out the comments that come in from the YouTube. But I wanted to give an opportunity to shout out this person who responded to episode 342, Fleer. They said, finding this channel was a blessing from my recommended. I have always had issues listening to streamers or videos while playing Sea of Thieves, because the videos always have the in-game sound, including making playing with a video on in the background very disorienting and difficult. As someone who plays Sea of Thieves and has to watch streamers from time to time to get drops, I 100% sympathize with this, by the way. It is really hard to try and play Sea of Thieves when you hear cannon fire or gunshots around you, and the audio is so good, you're questioning whether or not that's something that's happening in your game or happening in the streamer's game. So getting back to the comment, this takes all the positives and mashes it into one with the news that you give from various Sea of Thieves social medias to the gameplay without audio, so I have some visual to watch when the game is not important. You have 100% earned my sub. Keep up the good work. So thank you, Fleer. I appreciate the comment. Really made my week, and I appreciate that a lot. So if you guys don't know, over on YouTube, I do go out and film B-roll for all of the episodes. So I usually, while I'm playing, I'll usually record, however long, usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on if I know the episode's long, and throw that up on the YouTube version so that there's something just kind of in the background that you can watch while listening to the actual episode. So if you haven't checked that out, that's available. That's over at, gosh, what is my YouTube? I know I have the link in the show notes, but I couldn't tell you to save my life. If I could tell you what is it? It's at CaptainLogun, actually. There we go. So it's at CaptainLogun. Even though it's been the Keelhauled podcast for, man, I am really coming up on 7 years of the show, aren't I? 394 videos, not including the content outside of the actual, including the content that's outside the normal episodes and stuff. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I do over there. I know a lot of folks actually listen on Spotify, now that I think about it, but there's a new market thing through Android that is kind of picking up all the analytical data. So if I were to take a look at the spread, it looks like Spotify, probably about 30% of the listeners, you guys are on Spotify. So shout out to you. Hope you guys enjoy it. Like Spotify. 25% are on Apple Podcasts, which is surprising. I'd be curious to hear, like, if you guys actually like Apple Podcasts. Has that been like, is that getting better? Because I know it was kind of bad for a while, and it seems like they've tried to do some work to actually like make that better. But I have no idea whether or not that's something that is actually working fairly well. And then, yeah, everything else is just kind of like other devices. Shout out to the Amazon Music podcast people and the Podbeam apps out there. Definitely appreciate that. The 3% of you on Audible, that's crazy. Kudos to you. You guys are awesome. And I think that's pretty much it. I did want to thank It's Evo. I put out the request out there for like noise canceling headphones. He says the Bose Quiet Comfort 2 earbuds are the go-to. So definitely going to be looking at those. Appreciate the actual like heads up on that as well too. So I think that is going to do it. So Pirates, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always do so in the comments. You can always do so via the Discord. Discord's probably the most active place that I'm going to be at. I'm also over on Blue Sky. I am hard cutting out like Twitter if I possibly can. That would be fantastic. So I'm over at Blue Sky at CaptainLogun.bluesky.social. Those are pretty much the go-tos as far as like the social media goes. There's always the email, but you can always check the show notes in the app or on the website. Show notes always have like all of my social links as well as the merchandise. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always take them there. If you're a patron, you have your own channel in the Discord, but you also have the channel for chat on the Patreon website, as well as the comment section there. A lot of people get in touch with me there as well too. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Any concerns, comments, feedback, always appreciate it. Always take it into consideration. So that's pretty much it. So Pirates, thank you. I love you, and I look forward to sailing with you on the Sea of Thieves.